Jonathan Hart strode through the bustling streets of New York City, the cacophony of honking cars and chattering pedestrians, creating a backdrop that felt both lively and hollow. The skyscrapers loomed overhead, their glass facades reflecting the fading light of the setting sun, yet he found no comfort in their grandeur. 2 years had passed since the tragic loss of his wife, Lily, and despite his wealth and success as a businessman, an emptiness gnawed at him, a void that no amount of money or accomplishment could fill. As he walked, Jonathan's mind drifted to memories of Lily, her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her dreams, and the warmth of her embrace that could dissolve the coldest of days. His heart ached at the thought of her, a constant reminder of what he had lost. He could remember their last moments together, her frail body in the hospital bed, the beeping machines, the sterile smell of antiseptic that had filled the room. "I love you, Jonathan," she had whispered, her voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll find happiness again." "Find happiness?" he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. How could he ever do that? The very notion felt like a betrayal to her memory. His life had devolved into a series of board meetings and business deals, all while he carried the weight of grief on his shoulders. Wealth had brought him power, but it had not brought him peace. "Hey, Hart!" a voice called out, breaking Jonathan from his reverie. He turned to see Mark, a colleague from his firm, waving him over. "You coming to the gala this weekend? It's going to be a big one." Jonathan forced a smile, though his heart wasn't in it. "I'll think about it, Mark. Just busy with work." Mark frowned, sensing the underlying sorrow. "You need to get out, man. Meet some people. Lily wouldn't want you to shut yourself away like this." Jonathan nodded, but the thought of mingling with strangers at a gala was unappealing. "I appreciate it, but I'm fine, really." As he resumed his walk home, the city buzzed with life around him, but he felt like a ghost, drifting through a world he no longer belonged to. Each step felt heavy, the pavement beneath him a reminder of the weight of his sorrow. It was during this aimless stroll that Jonathan's attention was suddenly drawn to a narrow alleyway, a passageway usually overlooked by the bustling throngs. A faint sound reached his ears, soft cries, almost like the whimpering of a small animal. Curiosity piqued, he stepped closer, peering into the dim light of the alley. What he found was a sight that would forever alter the course of his life. Nestled amidst discarded cardboard boxes and trash was a small baby, wrapped in a dirty, tattered blanket. Jonathan's heart raced as he approached, the cries becoming more pronounced, a desperate plea for attention. He knelt down, his breath hitching in his throat at the sight before him. The baby, no older than a few months, had tiny hands that clutched a crumpled photograph. Jonathan's heart sank as he recognized the image. It was Lily. "No, how is this possible?" he whispered, his voice trembling as he reached for the child. The baby's wide, innocent eyes stared back at him, seemingly unafraid, as if sensing his turmoil. He carefully picked her up, cradling her against his chest, and felt the warmth of her body seep into him, a stark contrast to the coldness that had enveloped his heart for so long. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured, more to himself than to the baby. "I've got you. You're safe now." The baby continued to whimper, and Jonathan instinctively began to rock her gently. His thoughts raced as he examined the photograph in her tiny grasp. It was a candid shot of Lily, her radiant smile illuminating the image, capturing the essence of the woman he had loved so deeply. The sight of it sent a jolt through him, a mix of joy and sorrow swirling inside him. How could this child be here, in such a painful location, holding on to a piece of Lily? He glanced around the alley, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows and explain everything, but the only sound was the distant hum of the city. It was as if the universe had conspired to lead him to this moment, and yet it filled him with dread. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly, looking into the baby's eyes, which seemed to hold a wisdom beyond her years. "What are you doing here?" After a moment, he made a decision. He couldn't leave her here, not like this. Jonathan stood up, the baby cradled securely in his arms, and took a deep breath. He knew he would face questions, judgment, and perhaps even disbelief, but he couldn't abandon her. "All right, little one," he whispered, "let's get you home." As he walked back through the streets of New York, the weight of the day felt lighter, and a sense of purpose ignited within him. The baby, whom he inexplicably felt connected to, snuggled against him, her soft breaths calming his racing heart. Upon arriving home, Jonathan settled into the familiar surroundings of his spacious apartment, but everything felt different now. The walls, once adorned with memories of him and Lily, now felt barren and echoing. He placed the baby gently on the couch, wrapping her in a warm blanket, and took a moment to gather himself. He retrieved the photograph from her tiny hands, studying it once more. It was a perfect depiction of Lily, and as he gazed at her smiling face, a flood of emotions washed over him. "I don't even know your name," he said, glancing down at the baby, whose eyes were now fluttering as she began to drift off to sleep. "What should I call you?" "Emma," he whispered, the name forming in his mind as he felt an inexplicable bond with this child. "I think I'll call you Emma." As the minutes passed, Jonathan found himself lost in thought, the weight of the day's events settling heavily on his shoulders. He had taken a child from a dumpster, a child that seemed inextricably linked to Lily. The questions swirled in his mind like a tempest. How did this baby end up there? What was the connection to Lily? He felt a pang of guilt. Was he doing the right thing? But the moment he held Emma in his arms, he had felt a spark of hope, a flicker of something he thought he had lost forever. "Emma," he said softly, as if trying to connect with her on a deeper level. "We're going to find out the truth together." Jonathan gently stroked the baby's fine hair, feeling a wave of protectiveness wash over him. In that moment, he resolved to uncover the circumstances surrounding her abandonment, to understand the mystery that had woven their fates together. As he sat there, with Emma nestled against him, Jonathan felt a glimmer of purpose ignite within his heart, a determination to honor Lily's memory and protect this child who had unknowingly stepped into his life, reigniting a flicker of hope amid the shadows of his grief. But as he looked at Emma, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a journey fraught with unanswered questions and hidden truths. The photo of Lily, the baby in his arms, everything felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved, and he was determined to piece it together, no matter where it led him. Jonathan Hart sat in his spacious yet eerily quiet living room, cradling the baby, Emma, in his arms. The soft glow of the chandelier cast a warm light on the child's cherubic face, illuminating the striking resemblance she bore to his late wife, Lily. The photo of Lily, now slightly crumpled from being clutched so tightly, lay on the coffee table, a haunting reminder of his past. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, heavy with conflicting emotions: love, fear, and a desperate need for answers. He had just gotten off the phone with the authorities, who had responded to his call concerning the abandoned baby. They had urged him to keep Emma until they could investigate further, a suggestion that felt both surreal and comforting. "You should take care of her for now, Mr. Hart. Given the circumstances, it's the best course of action," the officer had said, his voice steady and reassuring. Jonathan had felt the gravity of those words sink into him. He had lost Lily to tragedy, and now, here was a piece of her, perhaps even a piece of his future, wrapped in a blanket, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Why were you left in that dumpster?" Jonathan murmured to Emma, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. The baby cooed, her tiny fingers reaching instinctively for his face. "You must be so confused," he continued, feeling an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "I promised to take care of you." Days passed, and as Jonathan navigated the early stages of fatherhood, he found himself becoming increasingly attached to Emma. Each time she smiled or laughed, his heart swelled with a warmth he thought he had lost forever. He delighted in the little moments, the way she would curl up against him when he rocked her to sleep, or how her laughter echoed through the halls of their home, filling it with life. The once empty rooms now felt alive, resonating with the sounds of a child. Yet, the mystery surrounding Emma lingered like a shadow at the edge of his mind. Jonathan often found himself staring at the photo of Lily, searching for answers in her smiling eyes. Had she known about this child? Was Emma connected to the secrets of Lily's past? The questions gnawed at him, refusing to let go. One evening, as the golden hues of sunset spilled through the living room windows, Jonathan decided to delve into Lily's belongings. He had avoided this task for too long, but the need for answers compelled him. He opened the drawers of the ornate dresser that had once held Lily's cherished items. Inside, he found a mixture of jewelry, letters, and the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. As he rummaged through the drawer, his fingers brushed against something odd, a small leather-bound journal. He hesitated before pulling it out, feeling a wave of nostalgia wash over him. With trembling hands, he opened the journal, revealing pages filled with Lily's neat handwriting. The first few entries were mundane, detailing her daily life and thoughts, but as he flipped through the pages, the tone began to shift. Today, I felt a deep sense of longing. I saw a family with a little girl at the park, and it stirred something in me. I wish I could have a child of my own. Jonathan's heart sank. He could almost hear Lily's voice, infused with hope and yearning. He continued reading, each entry unraveling more of Lily's hidden struggles. Infertility has been a heavy burden. I sometimes feel like I'm failing Jonathan. He deserves to be a father, and I want to give him that happiness. I've been thinking about adoption. The revelation hit him like a freight train. Lily had wanted a child, but had never shared this with him. He felt a mixture of heartbreak and anger. Did she consider adopting while they were still together? Why hadn't she confided in him? The entries grew more emotional, revealing Lily's sorrow and her dreams of creating a family. Jonathan's eyes stung with unshed tears as he realized how deeply Lily had longed for a child, a dream that had never materialized. Sometimes I feel like I'm running out of time. I want to be a mother, but the clock is ticking. I wish I could find a way to make this happen. The final entry sent chills down his spine. I had a strange encounter today. A woman approached me in the cafe, claiming she could help me find a child in need of a loving home. It felt risky, but the idea of finally having a child, of fulfilling our dream, I can't help but feel drawn to it. Jonathan closed the journal, engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions. Lily's desire to adopt had been a secret she had kept from him, a longing that now made the connection between Emma and his late wife even more profound. Was Emma the child Lily had always dreamed of? Just then, Emma stirred in her crib, breaking Jonathan from his thoughts. He rushed to her side, feeling an overwhelming need to protect her, to shield her from the world that had been so cruel to both of them. He picked her up, and she cooed softly, her tiny fingers gripping his shirt. "I'll take care of you, Emma," he whispered, determination flooding through him. "I'll find out the truth about your past, and I won't let anyone hurt you." Days turned into nights, and Jonathan found himself lost in a maze of memories and revelations. He became more vigilant, keeping a watchful eye on Emma while diving deeper into Lily's past. He contacted her closest friends, hoping to piece together the fragments of her life he had never known. Each conversation left him feeling more connected to Lily, but also more haunted by her secrets. One afternoon, he met with Sarah, one of Lily's old friends, in a quaint cafe in the West Village. The atmosphere was cozy, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. As they settled into a small corner booth, Jonathan noticed the way Sarah's eyes flickered with concern. It was clear she had something on her mind. "Jonathan, I'm so sorry for your loss," Sarah began, her voice steady yet filled with empathy. "Lily was one of the kindest people I've ever known. She always talked about wanting a family." Jonathan nodded, his heart aching as he spoke. "I found her journal. She wanted a child, Sarah. She even considered adoption." Sarah's eyes widened, and she leaned in closer. "I knew she was struggling with infertility, but I had no idea she was looking into adoption. She never mentioned it to me." "Do you know if she had any contacts? Anyone she spoke to about this?" Jonathan pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. "I wish I could help," Sarah replied softly, biting her lip. "But I do remember her mentioning a woman who was involved in social work, someone who might have connections to adoption agencies." Jonathan felt a flicker of hope. "Do you remember her name?" "Her name was Clara Evans. She was passionate about helping families find children in need. I can give you her contact information," Sarah offered, her expression turning serious. "Thank you," Jonathan said, taking a deep breath. "I need to find out if this is all connected to Emma." As they parted ways, Jonathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would track down Clara Evans and uncover the truth behind Lily's dreams and the child he held in his arms. No matter what it took, he was determined to protect Emma and honor Lily's memory. That night, as he tucked Emma into her crib, he glanced at the photo of Lily on the wall, feeling a sense of resolve wash over him. He whispered softly, "I will find the answers, Lily. I promise." But little did Jonathan know, the path he was about to embark on would lead him into a web of secrets and betrayals that would challenge everything he believed about love, loss, and family. Jonathan Hart sat at his sleek mahogany desk, a myriad of emotions swirling within him like a tempest. The dim light of his office cast long shadows, mirroring the darkness that had settled in his heart since Lily's departure from this world. With a deep breath, he picked up his phone, his fingers hovering over the contacts list until they landed on Sarah, one of Lily's closest friends. "Maybe she can help me understand," he muttered, dialing the number. After a few rings, a warm yet cautious voice answered. "Jonathan, is everything okay?" "Not really, Sarah," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his revelations. "I found something about Lily that I need to talk to you about." "Of course. What is it?" He hesitated, his mind racing back to the journal and its haunting confessions of longing and dreams unfulfilled. "I found a journal. Lily had been thinking about adopting." A pause followed, filled with the soft sounds of Sarah's breathing. "Oh, Jonathan, I knew she wanted children, but I never thought she'd pursue adoption. That was always a sensitive subject for her." "Sensitive? She was planning it in secret, Sarah. There's more. I found a photo of a baby. With her?" "What do you mean?" "She's in the dumpster, Sarah, clutching that photo. I took her home. I named her Emma." "Wait, you took her home? Jonathan, are you sure that's a good idea?" "I know what it sounds like, but I can't just leave her there. Sarah, she looks so much like Lily. It's uncanny. I feel this connection." He could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this child was somehow woven into the fabric of his late wife's life. "Jonathan, you need to be careful. There's a lot you don't know," Sarah warned, her voice growing serious. "Exactly why I'm calling you. I need to know more about Lily's past, her friends, her life before we met. Can you help me?" "Of course. I'll come over tomorrow," she promised, her voice softening. "We'll figure this out together." As he hung up, Jonathan felt a flicker of hope amidst the uncertainty. He glanced at Emma, who was peacefully sleeping in her crib, a small angelic figure that stirred memories of Lily's laughter and kindness. His heart ached for the woman he had loved and lost. But now he found himself grappling with the truth that Lily might have kept secrets from him. The next day Sarah arrived, her demeanor a blend of warmth and concern. "Hey, where's the little one?" she asked, looking around the lavish apartment. "In the nursery," Jonathan replied, leading her down the hallway. As they entered the room, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God, she looks just like Lily," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "What I'm trying to understand is why. Why did Lily never tell me about this?" Sarah sat down on the edge of the crib, her fingers brushing lightly against Emma's soft cheek. "Lily was a complicated person. She had her reasons for wanting to adopt, and maybe she didn't feel like she could share them with you." "What do you mean?" Jonathan pressed, leaning against the doorframe, feeling the tension between them. There were whispers about her wanting to adopt, even before she got sick. She felt that she couldn't have children, but she had so much love to give. The thought of a little one in need, it consumed her. Jonathan's heart ached at the thought. "What else do you know? Were there plans? People she was talking to?" "Not that I know of," Sarah replied, shaking her head. "But I can reach out to some of her other friends. They might have known more." After a brief pause, Jonathan nodded, his determination solidifying. "I need to find out everything I can. If Emma is connected to Lily in any way, I can't let her slip through my fingers." As Sarah rifled through her phone, Jonathan's mind was racing. He recalled the unsettling feeling he had experienced while researching adoption records online last night. It was then that he stumbled upon something that left him breathless. "Sarah, there's something else. I found information about an underground adoption ring. Lily had been in contact with them." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "An underground adoption ring? Jonathan, that's serious. You need to be careful." "I know, but I can't ignore it. If Lily was involved, I need to understand why. What was she planning?" Sarah's brow furrowed as she processed the implication. She could have been trying to rescue a child from a bad situation, or maybe she was being deceived. Either way, we need to tread lightly. Just then, Jonathan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number, simply reading, "Be careful. Not everyone is who they seem." His heart raced, the words sending a chill down his spine. "I just got this text," he said, showing the screen to Sarah. "Who is it from?" she asked, her voice low. "I don't know. Jonathan, this feels like a warning. Do you think someone's watching you?" "I don't know, but it's unsettling," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe we should take a step back and reassess. I can help you look into this, but we need to be cautious," Sarah urged, concern etched on her face. "I can't just sit back when I have this child in my care. I'm responsible for her now," he insisted, anger creeping into his voice. "Of course you are, but it's not just about you anymore. There are bigger forces at play here," Sarah replied, her tone firm. Jonathan turned away, staring out the window at the bustling city below. "I never thought I'd be in this position. I'm not equipped for this." "You're doing better than you think. You've already made the first step by bringing Emma into your life," Sarah reassured him. "But we need to approach this with caution. Let me make those calls." As Sarah began to make her inquiries, Jonathan's thoughts drifted back to Lily. What had she been involved in? Why had she never confided in him? The weight of unanswered questions pressed heavily on his chest. Hours passed as they sifted through memories and stories, but Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled deeper into a web of intrigue that threatened to engulf him. Just as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the room, Jonathan's phone rang again. This time, it was a familiar voice. "Jonathan, it's me. I have something important to tell you about Emma." His heart raced as he recognized the voice. "Who is this?" "It's someone who knows about your daughter and your wife. You need to listen carefully." The voice was distorted, making it hard to discern who was speaking. "What do you know?" Jonathan pressed, panic rising within him. "Just know that not everyone you trust is who they say they are. Keep Emma close, and don't let anyone take her away." Before he could respond, the line went dead. Jonathan stared at the phone, his hand trembling. "Jonathan, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, noticing his distress. "It was a warning," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "From who?" "I don't know, but it felt real, Sarah. I need to protect Emma at all costs." "Then let's figure this out, together," she replied, her resolve steady as they faced the unknown together, united in their determination to uncover the truth behind the intricate tapestry of love, loss, and betrayal that now threatened to unravel around them. Jonathan Hart sat across from Sarah, the private investigator, in a modest cafe tucked away from the bustling streets of Manhattan. The faint aroma of coffee and pastries wafted through the air, yet Jonathan felt a heavy weight in his chest that no amount of caffeine could alleviate. He had just shared the harrowing story of his discovery, the baby girl he found in the dumpster, the photo of Lily, and the unsettling truths he had stumbled upon. Sarah listened intently, her sharp blue eyes never leaving his face, absorbing every detail with a mixture of compassion and determination. "I can't help but feel that this is all connected," Jonathan said, his voice cracking slightly. "Lily's past, the adoption ring, and now this baby, Emma. It's as if everything is intertwined in ways I can't even begin to understand." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "We need to approach this methodically. The first step is to gather as much information as possible about Lily's connections to the adoption ring. If there's a network involved, we might be able to trace where Emma came from and why someone would leave her in that dumpster." Jonathan leaned back, running a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his demeanor. "I just can't wrap my head around why Lily would have been involved in something so dangerous. She was always so nurturing, so loving. This doesn't align with the woman I knew." "Sometimes people have hidden sides," Sarah replied gently. "It's possible that Lily felt desperate, or maybe she was trying to do something good in a world that can be very dark. We need to keep our minds open to all possibilities." Jonathan sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "I just want to protect Emma. I don't know who to trust anymore. The call I received last night, they warned me to be careful." "That's a signal that you're on the right track," Sarah said, her voice firm. "It means there are people who will do anything to keep their secrets, but we're not going to back down. We'll find out everything we can, and we'll do it safely. You have to focus on keeping Emma safe." Jonathan's determination renewed. He nodded. "You're right. Let's start with the leads I found in Lily's journal. There were names mentioned, friends, acquaintances. Maybe they know something." As they finished their coffee, Jonathan felt a surge of hope. He was no longer alone in this fight. He had someone by his side who was equally invested in uncovering the truth. Together, they would navigate the murky waters of Lily's past and the complex web of the adoption ring. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, interviews, and late-night research. Jonathan and Sarah spent hours sifting through Lily's contacts, piecing together her life before her untimely death. They spoke to former colleagues, friends, and even distant relatives. Each conversation brought them closer to understanding the woman Jonathan had loved so deeply. One afternoon, they met with a woman named Claire, a close friend of Lily's from college. Claire was in her late 30s, with warm brown hair and an inviting smile that quickly faded as Jonathan recounted his story. Her eyes widened in disbelief as he spoke of the baby and the adoption ring. "Lily never mentioned anything about wanting to adopt," Claire said, shaking her head. "But she did often talk about wanting children. She was heartbroken when she couldn't have any of her own." Jonathan's heart sank. "Do you think she could have been looking for a way to have a child? Maybe she found a way to connect with this underground network?" Claire frowned, her brow furrowing in thought. "It's possible. She was passionate about helping others. There were times I suspected she might do something unconventional, but I never thought she would go this far. If she was involved with this ring, it must have been out of desperation." "Do you know anyone who might have more information?" Jonathan pressed. "Anyone who might have been involved?" "I can think of one person," Claire said slowly. "There was a couple we used to hang out with, Mark and Jenna. They were really into social causes and had connections with a lot of charities. Maybe they knew something about Lily's intentions." Jonathan felt a flicker of hope. "Can you give me their contact information?" Claire scribbled down the couple's details, looking worried. "Just be careful, Jonathan. If there's something dangerous going on, you might be putting yourself at risk." "I understand," he replied, his voice steady. "But Emma is worth it. I have to know the truth." As they wrapped up their meeting with Claire, Jonathan's mind raced with possibilities. What if Mark and Jenna could lead them to the answers he desperately sought? What if they could help him understand why Lily had been drawn into such a perilous situation? Later that evening, Jonathan and Sarah met in his apartment, the walls adorned with memories of his life with Lily. The atmosphere felt heavy as they prepared to call Mark and Jenna. They sat across from each other, a laptop open between them, the flickering screen illuminating their determined faces. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but laced with anticipation. "Ready as I'll ever be," Jonathan replied, his heart pounding in his chest. He dialed the number, and after several rings, a voice answered. "Hello?" "Hi, is this Mark?" Jonathan asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "Yes, this is Mark. Who is this?" "My name is Jonathan Hart. I was a close friend of Lily's. I'm trying to find out more about her life before she passed away. I was hoping you could help me." There was a pause on the other end, and Jonathan could almost hear the gears turning in Mark's mind. "Lily? I haven't spoken to her in years. Why do you want to know?" "I found a baby," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "A baby that was left in a dumpster with a photo of Lily. I believe there's a connection, and I need to understand what she was involved in before she died." The silence stretched between them, heavy with tension. "A baby? This is serious. I need to know more." Jonathan exchanged glances with Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Lily had been speaking to people about adoption. I suspect it's linked to an underground ring. Do you know anything about that?" Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. "You shouldn't be looking into this, Jonathan. There are people involved who are dangerous. I can't help you." "Please, I need your help," Jonathan implored, desperation creeping into his voice. "If you know something, you have to tell me. Meet me tomorrow at the park on 5th Avenue. I'll share what I know. But you need to be careful. This is bigger than you think." The call ended abruptly, leaving Jonathan feeling a mix of exhilaration and dread. "What did he say?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide. "He wants to meet tomorrow. He claims he has information but warned me that it's dangerous," Jonathan replied, his heart racing. "Then we need to be prepared," Sarah said, her tone serious. "We can't go in blind. We need a plan." Jonathan nodded, his mind racing with the implications. They were delving deeper into a world he had never imagined existed, a world where the stakes were high and the danger was palpable. He felt a surge of determination. He had to protect Emma, no matter what it took. As they discussed their strategy, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were treading on thin ice. The closer they got to the truth, the more perilous their journey became. But he had no choice. Emma was counting on him, and he would do everything in his power to shield her from the shadows of Lily's past. Little did they know, unseen eyes were watching their every move, and the danger was far closer than they realized. Jonathan stood in front of the large wooden podium at the press conference, his heart pounding in his chest. The bright lights of the cameras felt like a spotlight, illuminating not just his face but the turmoil that had engulfed his life since he found Emma. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his nerves. The room was packed with reporters, all eager to catch a glimpse of the man who had taken in a mysterious baby linked to his deceased wife, Lily. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with each word. "Thank you for being here today. I stand before you not just as a businessman, but as a father who has found himself in an extraordinary situation. This is Emma." He gestured to the small child cradled in his arms, a bundle of innocence wrapped in a pink blanket. The crowd murmured, their cameras flashing, capturing the moment. Emma was found abandoned, clutching a photograph of my late wife, Lily. As I've come to learn, this isn't just a story about the tragedy of abandonment, but a tale that intertwines with a much darker reality, an underground adoption ring that has been operating right under our noses. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the room. "I urge anyone with information regarding this network or Emma's origins to come forward. We need to protect the innocent." The room buzzed with questions, the journalists vying to ask the first. A reporter from the New York Post raised her hand. "Mr. Hart, can you tell us more about the circumstances surrounding Emma's abandonment?" Jonathan swallowed hard, the memory of finding the baby still raw. "I was walking home one evening when I heard her cries. I found her in a dumpster, alone and scared, with nothing but this photograph of Lily. It shattered my heart." He held up the picture, and gasps filled the audience. "I have reason to believe that this baby might be connected to Lily's past in ways I'm still uncovering." Another journalist interjected. "What steps are you taking to ensure Emma's safety? There are reports of threats against you since you've gone public." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "I'm hiring security, and I've involved the authorities. But the real danger lies in the unknown people who are connected to this adoption ring. I won't stop until I find the truth." As the questions continued, Jonathan felt a mix of relief and dread. He had taken a stand, but the shadows lurking beneath his newfound purpose were growing more menacing. The press conference concluded, and he stepped away from the podium, Emma's tiny fingers curling around his thumb. Later that night, Jonathan sat in his lavish but empty apartment, the city lights flickering outside like distant stars. Despite the media's support, unease gnawed at his insides. He scrolled through his phone, checking for any news updates or messages. A chill ran down his spine as he noticed an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Jonathan Hart," he muttered to himself, his heart racing. With a deep breath, he pressed the green button to answer. "Hello? Mr. Hart," a gravelly voice came through, sending a shiver down his spine. "You need to stop this ridiculous charade. The child is not safe with you." "What do you mean?" Jonathan's voice was firm, but fear clawed at him. "Who is this?" "Just someone looking out for your interests. You've gone public with a story that's drawn unwanted attention to your family. I suggest you think carefully about your next move." The line went dead, leaving Jonathan staring at the phone in disbelief. He felt as though the walls were closing in on him. Pulling his coat tighter around him, he glanced at Emma, who was blissfully unaware of the peril surrounding them. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and paranoia. Jonathan hired a security team and stayed close to Emma, rarely leaving her side. Each time he heard a knock at the door or the elevator ding, his heart raced. It was exhausting, but he knew he couldn't let fear dictate his life, nor could he let it affect Emma. One afternoon, while Jonathan was preparing a bottle for Emma, he received another call. This time, the voice was softer, almost pleading. "Mr. Hart, please, you need to listen to me. I'm Emma's biological mother." Jonathan's hands froze, the bottle slipping from his grasp and shattering on the floor. "What? Who are you?" he demanded, his pulse quickening. "I can explain everything. Please, just give me a chance. Emma is in grave danger, and you need to understand that I never wanted to lose her." "Why should I trust you?" Jonathan shot back, anger and fear swirling inside him. "You abandoned her, You're part of this mess." "No," the voice insisted, desperation tinging her tone. "I was coerced. I didn't have a choice. They took her from me, and now they want her back. You're putting her at risk by keeping her. Please, you have to return her to me." Jonathan felt the blood drain from his face as he processed her words. "You expect me to hand her over without any proof? What if you're lying?" "I'm not," she cried, her voice cracking. "I can prove it. Meet me and I'll show you everything. But you have to hurry. They know you have her." Jonathan's mind raced, torn between his protective instincts and the woman's desperate plea. He had fought so hard to keep Emma safe, to understand the truth behind her presence in his life. But now, faced with the possibility that he could be endangering her further, he felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. "Where do we meet?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper, a mixture of dread and hope fluttering in his chest. "Central Park, near the fountain. Tomorrow at noon," she instructed. "Please, be careful. I'll be waiting." As he ended the call, Jonathan's heart raced with conflicting emotions. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being manipulated, but the urgency in the woman's voice echoed in his mind. Emma was his priority, and he couldn't risk her safety. That night, Jonathan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He replayed every moment since finding Emma, questioning every decision he had made. The weight of his choices pressed heavily on his conscience. The next day, Jonathan arrived at Central Park, his heart pounding in his chest. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground, but he felt no warmth today. He scanned the area, searching for the woman who claimed to be Emma's mother. As he approached the fountain, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, disheveled and anxious. Her eyes darted around, as if she were afraid of being followed. Jonathan's instincts kicked in, and he kept a safe distance. "Are you her?" he called, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Yes, it's me." She stepped closer, her expression a mixture of fear and desperation. "Thank you for coming. I need you to understand that Emma is not just a child to me. She is my daughter, and there are people who will stop at nothing to get her back." Jonathan narrowed his eyes, skepticism flooding his mind. "You think I'm going to just hand her over because you say so? You have to prove your connection." The woman took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "I know this is hard to believe, but I have documents, messages, evidence that shows I was coerced into giving her up. I never wanted this." Before Jonathan could respond, a shadow crossed his vision, and he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He turned, his instincts screaming that they weren't alone. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, and he realized that the danger he had feared was closing in on them. "Jonathan," the woman whispered, her voice trembling, "we need to leave, now." As Jonathan glanced back at her, fear surged through him. He had to protect Emma, but the reality of the situation was becoming increasingly perilous. The truth was slipping through his fingers like sand, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. The haunting question lingered in his mind. Who could he trust in this tangled web of secrets and lies? As Jonathan Hart stood in the dimly lit room, the weight of the woman's words hung heavily in the air. She was desperate, her eyes pleading, yet he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. The thought of returning Emma to her biological mother, a woman he knew nothing about, sent chills down his spine. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, Sarah's phone rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. "Hold on," Sarah said, her voice urgent. She answered the call, her expression shifting from curiosity to alarm in a matter of seconds. "What? Are you sure?" she exclaimed, her eyes darting toward Jonathan. "We need to meet, now." "Sarah, what's going on?" Jonathan pressed, his heart racing. The woman standing before him shifted nervously, her hands wringing together as if she could feel the impending storm. "Jonathan," Sarah said, her voice low and serious. "The woman you're speaking to, she isn't who she claims to be. She's an accomplice of the underground adoption ring. They've been watching you, waiting for the right moment to make their move." Jonathan's heart sank, a mix of fear and anger coursing through his veins. "What do you mean? How do you know this?" "I just got off the phone with a contact who's been tracking the ring. They've been trying to find Emma, and they've got people on the inside," Sarah explained. "You need to get Emma out of here now." The woman's face paled, and she took a step back, her earlier confidence crumbling. "You can't believe them," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I'm her mother. I just want to keep her safe." "No," Jonathan said firmly, his resolve hardening. "You're lying. I won't let you take her." The realization hit him like a freight train. He had been manipulated, toyed with by a system he had only just begun to unpack. He had to protect Emma, no matter the cost. "Jonathan, we need to leave," Sarah urged, her urgency palpable. "They could be on their way right now." He turned to the woman, his heart breaking for the child who was caught in the middle of all this chaos. "I don't know what your intentions are, but I will not let you put Emma in danger." As they moved toward the door, Jonathan felt a surge of protectiveness. He scooped Emma into his arms, cradling her close to his chest. The woman lunged forward, desperation etched on her face. "Please, you don't understand. She's in danger. They'll come for her." Jonathan's instincts flared. "If you really care about her, you'll stay away from us," he said, pushing past her. Sarah led the way, her eyes scanning the hallway as they hurried toward the exit. They reached the street, the city's chaos swirling around them. Jonathan's mind raced as they ducked into a nearby coffee shop to regroup. "What now?" he asked Sarah, breathing heavily. "How do we keep her safe?" "We have to get you two out of the city," Sarah replied, her voice steady but urgent. "I have a safe house we can use. It's not far from here, but we need to move quickly." Jonathan nodded, his protective instincts fully ignited. He couldn't let anyone take Emma away from him, not now, when they were finally beginning to bond. He felt a surge of determination. "Let's go." As they stepped outside, Jonathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He fished it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. "You can't hide her forever. We know where you are." His heart raced, panic coursing through him. "They've found us," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her eyes scanning the street for any signs of danger. Jonathan tightened his grip on Emma, who was blissfully unaware of the peril surrounding them. They ducked into an alley, the shadows cloaking them as they moved swiftly. Jonathan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Who were these people? And how had they become entangled in such a dark web of deception? The world he thought he knew had been turned upside down in a matter of days. Just as they reached the safe house, a modest, nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood, Jonathan felt a chill creep up his spine. The door swung open, and a man stepped out, his expression tense. "You made it," he said, ushering them inside. "But we need to act fast. They're on your trail." Jonathan stepped into the dimly lit room, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth. "What do you know about them?" he demanded. "Who are they?" "The underground ring is ruthless," the man replied, closing the door behind them. "They've been operating in the shadows for years, exploiting vulnerable women and children. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want." Jonathan felt a knot form in his stomach. He had stumbled into a world he never wanted to be a part of, yet here he was, caught in a fight for Emma's life. "What do I do?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to lay low for a while," Sarah said, her tone practical. "I'll make some calls to get more information on this woman and her connections. In the meantime, you need to focus on Emma." Jonathan nodded, his heart aching for the little girl who had already endured so much. As he looked down at her, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of responsibility. She wasn't just a child he had found. She was part of a legacy, a piece of Lily that he never knew existed. As the hours passed, Jonathan struggled to process everything he had learned. He had thought he was protecting Lily's memory by taking care of Emma, but now he realized that the truth was far more complicated. The baby was not just a reminder of his late wife. She was a living connection to a past he had never fully understood. "Jonathan," Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts, "I've found some information. The woman you encountered earlier, her name is Clara. She's deeply involved with the ring, but she's also hiding something else." Jonathan's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Clara is not just an accomplice. She was working with Lily before her death. They had a plan, Jonathan. A plan that involved Emma," Sarah said, her eyes locked onto his. "You need to brace yourself for what I'm about to tell you." Jonathan's breath hitched. He felt as though the floor had dropped out from under him. "What are you saying?" he asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "Emma is your biological daughter, conceived through a surrogate arrangement that Lily had set up. The connection was kept secret, but Clara knows everything. That's why she's been after you," Sarah explained, her voice steady. The revelation struck Jonathan like lightning. He staggered back, his mind racing to comprehend the enormity of what he had just heard. Emma was his daughter. The very child he had thought was a gift from fate was actually a piece of his own flesh and blood. "Why didn't Lily tell me?" he whispered, grappling with the tidal wave of emotions crashing over him. "Why keep this a secret?" "Perhaps she was afraid of how you'd react," Sarah suggested gently. "Or maybe she wanted to protect you from the complications that would come with it. But now, it's a reality you can't ignore." Jonathan stood frozen, torn between joy and grief. The child he had taken in, the baby he had vowed to protect, was not just a stranger, but his daughter, an extension of Lily's love and dreams. He felt a swell of protectiveness surge within him, mixed with a deep sadness for the woman he had lost. "Emma," he murmured, looking down at the baby who had captured his heart. He would do everything in his power to keep her safe, to ensure that the legacy of love Lily had hoped for would not be extinguished. As he held her close, he made a silent promise. He would face whatever darkness lay ahead, not just for himself, but for the child who deserved a chance at a life filled with love and security. As Jonathan stood at this crossroads, he knew that this was just the beginning of a harrowing journey. The truth, while painful, would guide him forward. He would uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the shadows and fight against the forces that sought to tear his family apart. Emma would not be alone. He would be her father, her protector, and he would ensure that their story would not end in tragedy.